Have you ever noticed that you don't have many friends, but you're also not desperate for them? You can socialize, you understand people, yet your circle stays small, almost empty. And deep down, you've wondered, is something wrong with me? Here's the truth most people never hear. If you have very few friends, psychology suggests you may actually be wired differently. Not broken, not antisocial. Different. Let's break down why. You process relationships more deeply than most people. For you, friendships aren't casual background noise. They're emotionally expensive. Psychology links this to high emotional processing. You don't just hang out, you absorb moods, you notice shifts in tone, you read between the lines. Most people can maintain dozens of shallow connections because they skim interactions. You don't skim, you dive. And because depth costs energy, you naturally limit how many people you let in, so your circle stays small. By design, you value mental peace more than social validation. Some people chase connection to feel worthy. You don't. Studies on intrinsic motivation show that people who rely less on external validation tend to prioritize internal stability. You'd rather be calm than popular. Rather be alone than drained, rather have silence than forced conversation. That doesn't make you cold, it makes you self-regulating, and that self-regulation quietly filters most people out. You detect inauthenticity faster than average. Ever get a weird feeling about someone and later realize you were right? That's not paranoia, it's social intuition. Psychology associates this with heightened emotional intelligence and pattern recognition. You notice inconsistencies, micro-expressions, subtle contradictions. Small talk doesn't fool you. Performative kindness doesn't impress you. As a result, you lose interest quickly. Not because people are bad, but because they're not real enough for you. You outgrew people earlier than expected. If you matured fast, this one hits hard. People labeled old souls often experience asynchronous development. Your emotional maturity grew faster than your peer groups. So while others bonded over trends, drama, or constant interaction, you were already questioning meaning, values, and direction. That gap doesn't close easily, and it often leaves you feeling alone in rooms full of people. You don't bond through frequency, you bond through intensity. Most friendships form through repetition, same place, same routine, same faces. But psychology shows some people bond through emotional intensity, not frequency. You don't need daily contact, you need honesty, depth, moments that matter. That means many relationships never click for you, and the few that do matter a lot. This is why you may go weeks without talking to someone, yet still feel connected. You're more comfortable with emotional independence. Here's a trait rarely talked about. You don't rely on people to regulate your emotions. Psychologists call this secure emotional autonomy. You self-soothe, you reflect internally. You don't panic when you're alone. Ironically, this makes it harder to maintain many friendships because you don't need them to function. You choose people, you don't cling to them, and choice always reduces quantity. You have a low tolerance for surface-level bonds. You can do small talk, you just don't enjoy it. Your brain craves meaningful stimulation, ideas, honest conversations, psychological depth. This makes casual socializing feel exhausting instead of energizing. So you withdraw. Not because you hate people, but because most interactions don't feed you. Over time, this naturally shrinks your circle. You've been misunderstood enough to become selective. At some point, you realized something painful. Not everyone tries to understand you. Repeated misunderstanding activates a psychological defense called selective social investment. You stop explaining yourself to everyone. You stop performing for acceptance. You wait, and only let people in who actually see you. That waiting period can look like loneliness from the outside, but internally, it's self-respect. You don't confuse solitude with failure. This is the rarest trait of all. You don't automatically see being alone as a problem to fix. While society equates popularity with success, psychology shows that some people associate solitude with clarity. You think better alone, reset faster alone, feel more like yourself alone. So even when friendships fade, you don't panic. You recalibrate, and that calm response to solitude sets you apart. Here's the real takeaway. Having very few friends doesn't automatically mean you're lonely. It often means you're selective, self-aware, emotionally independent, and wired for depth over noise. The world just isn't built to reward that. So if this video felt uncomfortably accurate, it's not because you're broken, it's because you're different, and different doesn't need fixing. It needs understanding. If this resonated with you, stay here. These videos are made for people who think quietly, feel deeply, and rarely see themselves. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.